officials can't even get in within that perimeter area. There is still debris falling from these collapsed buildings, and there are an untold number of people still trapped.
And we know that there are a couple of hundred firefighters who are missing. There are 78 New York police officers who are missing. And nobody down there, 30 or so blocks away from where we are, wants to see that number go up. So they will wait until the building is as safe as it might get. It will never be safe to go in there. There will always be risk, but the risk will mitigate a bit over time, and then they will slowly start to go into the building, start to search for who may still be there.
And
but
that's
that is
why,
days away.
And that's why but that's why the president's speech tonight has such a burden upon it. The stark reality of that makes what the president has to say tonight as difficult, probably as difficult a speech as any president, at least since Roosevelt's Day of Infamy speech.
Probably since Roosevelt. This is one of those moments. The president now just a few moments away from addressing the nation from the Oval Office. He has not been back in Washington for very long. But now, from the Oval Office, the president to talk about the extraordinarily horrible events of September 11th.
Good evening. Today, our fellow citizens, our way of life, our very freedom came under attack in a series of deliberate and deadly terrorist acts. The victims were in airplanes or in their offices. Secretaries, businessmen and women, military and federal workers, moms and dads, friends and neighbors. Thousands of lives were suddenly ended by evil, despicable acts of terror. The pictures of airplanes flying into buildings, fires burning, huge structures collapsing, have filled us with disbelief, terrible sadness, and a quiet, unyielding anger. These acts of mass murder were intended to frighten our nation into chaos and retreat. But they have failed. Our country is strong. A great people has been moved to defend a great nation. Terrorist attacks can shake the foundations of our biggest buildings, but they cannot touch the foundation of America. These acts shattered steel, but they cannot dent the steel of American resolve. America was targeted for attack because we're the brightest beacon for freedom and opportunity in the world, and no one will keep that light from shining. Today, our nation saw evil, the very worst of human nature, and we responded with the best of America, with the daring of our rescue workers, with the caring for strangers and neighbors who came to give blood and help in any way they could. Immediately following the first attack, I implemented our government's emergency response plans. Our military is powerful and it's prepared. Our emergency teams are working in New York City and Washington, D.C. to help with local rescue efforts. Our first priority is to get help to those who have been injured and to take every precaution to protect our citizens at home and around the world from further attacks. The functions of our government continue without interruption. Federal agencies in Washington, which had to be evacuated today, are reopening for essential personnel tonight and will be open for business tomorrow. Our financial institutions remain strong, and the American economy will be open for business as well. The search is underway for those who are behind these evil acts. I've directed the full resources of our intelligence and law enforcement communities to find those responsible and to bring them to justice. We will make no distinction between the terrorists who committed these acts and those who harbored them. I appreciate so very much the members of Congress who have joined me in strongly condemning these attacks. And on behalf of the American people, I thank the many world leaders who have called to offer their condolences and assistance. America and our friends and allies join with all those who want peace and security in the world, and we stand together to win the war against terrorism. Tonight I ask for your prayers for all those who grieve, for the children whose worlds have been shattered, for all whose sense of safety and security has been threatened. And I pray they will be comforted by a power greater than any of us, spoken through the ages in Psalm 23. Even though I walk through the valley of the shadow of death, I fear no evil, for you are with me. This is a day when all Americans from every walk of life unite in our resolve for justice and peace. America has stood down enemies before, and we will do so this time. None of us will ever forget this day, yet we go forward to defend freedom and all that is good and just in our world. Thank you. Good night, and God bless America.
President George W. Bush from the Oval Office tonight, almost, not quite, but almost 12 hours since the attack on the World Trade Center, the first plane hitting the Trade Center just a little bit past 8:45 this morning. The president said there is a quiet, unyielding anger in the country. We were attacked, the United States, he said, because the country is a beacon of freedom. And in talking about the efforts to find the people responsible, he said, we, the country, will not only go after those who did it, but those who harbor them. Our senior White House correspondent, John King, joins us. John.
Aaron, the president also calling this a mass murder, and we've been unable to get any estimates on those killed and injured. The president using the term thousands when discussing those killed today in the attack. That last point you were just making could prove critical. The president saying the United States government will make no distinction between the terrorists who carried out this attack and those who harbor them. Just before the president was speaking, I checked in with a couple of congressional sources who are telling CNN that in private briefings today, key members of Congress were told by senior administration officials that the administration is, quote, confident, based on the early evidence in this investigation, quote, confident that Osama bin Laden is responsible for this attack. Now, in those briefings, we're told the administration did not say that with a certainty, but did say it was confident, that it had hard evidence in hand, that the investigation was continuing. That could be a significant thing to follow up in the days ahead based on the remarks of the president from the Oval Office to the American people tonight. Aaron.
Mr. bin Laden has been an elusive character out there for a long time now. I guess he is on notice today. I think the president pretty clearly made that known. But he has not been easy to find, Mr. bin Laden, has he?
He has not been easy to find, and there has been a great deal of criticism, some from the Congress, some from members of this president's cabinet now during the prior administration, that the United States government was not doing enough on the second point, not only to try to go after Mr. bin Laden, but to take action against those governments that provided him sanction. That a key distinction the president making tonight, obviously, as we learn more about the investigation in the days ahead and the outreach from this government to allied governments around the world and perhaps to other governments suspected of giving aid and comfort to Mr. bin Laden in the next few days as we assess the grim death toll and those injured in the days ahead. That's something else to keep an eye on as well. Aaron.
John, thank you. John King, our senior White House correspondent. Paula?
And earlier on, Aaron, we were talking with Jeff Greenfield about the challenge of the president delivering a speech where the toll has been so enormous. Jeff, your reaction to the president's words tonight?
They are the words that he had to speak. But again, the question is, when the president says, it may have shaken the foundations of a building, but it did not shake our foundations in ourselves. That's what a president must tell us, and it's what we want to believe. But I venture to say in the country today, there are a lot of shaken people, not just in this city. And I think the key is not so much the words that were said tonight, but what happens in the days and weeks ahead. How different a country are we going to find? How much are our movements going to be restricted by the need for more security? The only other point I want to underscore John King's point, Richard Holbrooke on our air said, if the Taliban in Afghanistan is shielding bin Laden and he is the one responsible, they must feel the full force of our response. When the president said we will make no distinction between the terrorists and those who harbor him, I think that's very much the point he was making.
There was a report in an Arab newspaper that is actually based in London, where the editor actually indicated that Osama bin Laden had telegraphed this attack as long as 3 weeks ago. If that is true, one could expect there to be some political fallout from this.
Peter Bergen, who interviewed bin Laden 3 or 4 years ago, who was on our air earlier, made the point that every time bin Laden has been involved in an attack on American interests or personnel, he has in fact telegraphed, as he did presumably with the USS Cole and other events. And he said bin Laden, who once targeted American soldiers, has now changed his view. Any American civilian, by virtue of being a taxpayer, bin Laden thinks, is complicit in what he regards as America's misdeeds. So, you know, that's why the speech tonight is just the first of a very long chain of events whose end we can't possibly predict.
Meanwhile, as we all know, New Yorkers wake up to a completely different landscape here tomorrow. Public schools closed, the stock market closed, all flights in this country, domestic, international, postponed at least until noon tomorrow, maybe even longer than that. Let's check back in with Wolf Blitzer, who also has some more insights right now.
Paula, I'm sitting in the Washington Bureau, as is Cardinal Roger Mahony, the Archbishop of Los Angeles. He joins us now. Cardinal Mahony, explain to our viewers what has happened today.
Well, I think the very soul of our country has been severely tested. There has obviously been a great wound inflicted upon us. And there's great uncertainty in people's minds. There's great anguish. There's great outcry. But there's a numbness and an emptiness. And I think when the President called upon us to reach into the inner depths of our being and find that source of light, I think he has given us the insight we need. We in this country are people who, by and large, believe in God. We are people who believe in prayer. And I think this is the time, this is the moment when we need to rally our sense of belief, our unity as a people who believes in trust in God.
And as we speak, Cardinal Mahony, we're taking a look at some videotape of the devastation at the Pentagon, not very far from where we're sitting right now. When parents will try to explain this evil that occurred today, how should they explain that to their children?
Well, I think this is a precious moment for parents and families this evening, because I think children will be particularly terrified as they see all of these horrible things unfold on television. I think parents need to gather their children. I think they need to gather the family. And in whatever faith tradition they might have, they need to link today with their scripture, with the Bible, the Hebrew scriptures, the Quran, whatever belief system they have. This is an excellent moment to do it. I think also something that's significant today, as I drove over to the CNN headquarters tonight, and the city is quite dark. It occurred to me that terrorists live in darkness, and their evil deeds, they do not wish those to be seen. So I'd say to parents tonight, gather your family, get out a candle. If you have a candle, light the candle as a family, and let the children in the family see the hope that is in that light. And I'm hopeful that the President is going to declare a day of prayer this week, hopefully for all of us to come together in our various faith communities. But just as the terrorists tried through darkness to bring down the spirit of our people, I'd love to see people light a candle in their home, maybe put one in the front window. Let that light of hope and trust in God's providence in our lives, let that shine across our country tonight and tomorrow.
Cardinal Roger Mahony, the Archbishop of Los Angeles, thank you so much for those words. And I just want to throw back to our Aaron Brown in New York, but to remind our viewers that first crash occurred almost exactly some 12 hours ago when that first plane crashed into the World Trade Center in New York. Aaron?
Well, thank you, and particularly thanks to the Cardinal. Those were extraordinary words, and much needed, I think, to remind us how we might deal with the issues here with our children. I think all of us at some point today have wondered how we are going to explain this to them. Larry Eagleburger has been a part of a number of administrations in the diplomatic positions. He's, I think, familiar to many of you as well. He joins us from Charlottesville, Virginia, I believe. Again, good evening to you, sir. It's nice to see you again.
Good to see you.
I want to go back a few hours to conversation you had, because if I remember it correctly, you talked specifically about two things that came up in the President's statement. One is that we need to be proactive. The country needs to be proactive in attacking terrorist groups before they attack the United States. And this is the